All right, we'll call to order. The Bastrop EDC Board reserves the right to convene into executive session at any time during the meeting regarding any agenda item in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Government Code. Do we have any public comments at this point?
My mic is not able to turn on. Thank you. Chair, I have a point of privilege. I would like for you to agree to move the agenda item 4.1 after 3.1 so that I would like to make the suggestion that we review 3.1, go into executive session, and then come out and review 3.2.
I don't have any issues with that. Does anyone? That's fine with me. So therefore, since no public comments, and we'll go to 3.1, presentation and review of the agreement between BEDC and the Good Soul Brewing Company. And Sean, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank y'all. I appreciate y'all coming back and to reconsider this item, but I want to go through and give a full presentation related to the history of this project and as it relates to the business park itself. And so we have a fairly intensive presentation that I think that we will be able to get through in due course. So as everybody is aware, this is the business park marketing flyer. Just to give a status of where we're at in the park as far as developed real estate. All of the developed real estate is north of this green line here off of Jackson Street, Business Park Drive, and Technology Drive. The green real estate to the south and the east, as well as in the north and the east, is undeveloped real estate currently. So in the north part of the park, the board has approved the Technology MLK Extension Project. We have committed 5.5 acres to granite and stone. When this project is complete, we'll have 5 shovel-ready acres at the north end of the park. The lot, when you come in off of Jackson Street, the 9.5 acres, the contract is out to Bastrop County. We're awaiting their signature and returning that to us. And then we have 6.7 acres available here at Business Park in Jackson. It really, its highest and best use is as an office site. It's kind of got a hill here on the corner, and then it falls down into a flat spot here that L's back to the Business Park Drive in Jackson. Looking at the southern end of the park, we've got 2.8 acres currently available and 5.5 acres. The last year we've spent doing quite a bit of research in planning and engineering within the park. And what we know about this 2.8 acres, it has some uncompacted fill from the Technology Drive extension located on it. The current estimate for remediation on that is somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000. It is not advisable by our engineer to remediate that in advance of a project because we don't know what remediation the project actually needs. Estimated fair market value, if it was shovel ready, is about $128,000. Looking at B5, we have the same problem there. Uncompacted fill, estimate at the moment is about $100,000 to $150,000 because until we know what the project is, we don't know how intensive it's going to be. Fair market value on that is $239,000 and some change. We are currently working a project on that site that we are hopeful in the next few months that it will either be successful or we will move on and be looking at another project there. So with that update of where we are status-wise real estate in the park, we've got 6.7 acres that is, in our opinion and that of our engineer, is probably best used as an office site. We'll have 5 acres up here in the north part of the park, the 2.8 acres here on B4, and then B5, I would say at the moment, we've got a good project we're working. We'll see where that goes. They understand the site conditions and are willing to work with us through the process of working on that project to see if we can make it work. I do have a recommendation here on the park that at some later date we need to sit down and really have a discussion about the status and the future of the park to make sure that our engineers in the room and we can answer any and all questions that we've spent the last 12 months on really intensively, and the last 30 months since I've been here really looking at what the status is. But that is something that will be coming up in the near future to make sure the board has all the information, and whatever direction y'all provide, us as staff, we're able to provide that out to the community and tell the story of why we're doing what we're doing in the park. So the item on the agenda tonight is really about this lot here, which is the Good Soul Brewing site. It's 3.745 acres. The current fair market value appraisal on it done by Real Property Services is $163,000. This is the current plat, and you can zoom in here. It's lot 3A. It was a replat. You'll find this a lot in the park. We have replatted and replatted and replatted some more sometimes, and so there's multiple variations of these, but this is the current version for this site. And so we want to look a little bit at the GSB agreement and make sure that everybody understands their original agreement. 2.1 is the act of default or default, and what constitutes a default, and timely, fully, completely comply with one or more of the requirements, obligations, duties, terms, conditions, warranties as stated in the agreement. By not building the project within the time frame, that constitutes a default. The effective date means the date upon which it's assigned. That's very important as we start calculating the timeline of what's going on here. The minimum investment amount is the first place it gives us the 27 months, and then also in 6.13 that the shall diligently and faithfully in good workmanlike manner complete the project within 27 full calendar months following the effective date. We move on into 7.2 and what is the cessation of operations, BEDC's right to reacquire the land and facility. If the sale or assignment is not completed within 18 months of the cessation of operations, the EDC has the right to repurchase the land and the facility, and it goes on to say that an amount equal to the then fair market value is determined by an independent third-party appraiser. So I appreciate Drew asked a very good question yesterday, and we went and did the research on this as it relates to other EDC agreements, and we went and looked at the last 3 agreements that are outstanding in the park. The first agreement that we looked at was the JAMCO agreement. Within 1 year of the BEDC's notice that triggers this action due to cessation of operations, it's purchased at no more than fair market value, and we have a 12-month period in there. Looking at the Elliott Electric agreement, this was the first deal that I did when I was got the Bastrop. If the sale or assignment is not completed within 24 months, an amount equal to the then fair market value. If we declined, and we have 6 months to do that in. And then the AEI agreement, which is the most recently completed project in the park, sell or assignment within 24 months from cessation of operations, equal to the fair market value, and we have the same 6 months. The difference in the Elliott Electric agreement and the AEI agreement in comparison to the Good Soul Brewing agreement is both of those companies had financing in place, and when we went to the title company and closed on the real estate, they were prepared to start construction henceforth. And so those projects basically we closed into the interim construction financing or closed into construction while they were pulling permits at the city of Bastrop to move forward with those projects. That is the preferred methodology for the EDC, is not to transfer property until they're ready to break ground. And hence we've got 2 buildings on the ground, and I think AEI and Elliott are better examples here than the JAMCO project because it's a much larger, lengthier project. What we know about having gone back and stopped looking at the GSB agreement in a vacuum, and when we step back, this section of the contract in all 3 of those contemplates that there was a building built when we got to this situation. It doesn't contemplate within any of these agreements buying back undeveloped raw real estate. And so that's kind of where we get a little bit into a little bit of no man's land on this. Unfortunately, the contracts say what the contracts say, and Habib will tell you that what they say legally binds us to what they say. And so there is no option around that that kind of explains why this language is in there and what it was intended at the time that it was contemplated for. So when we look at the GSB critical timeline, the effective date of the contract was March 17th of 2014. When you put this into your nice little Excel spreadsheet and you start getting it to add months up to it, the end of the performance period, which is when the default occurred, is June 17th, 2016. What the contract then says is once they default or cease operations, they've got 18 months to sell or assign the project, which takes you to December 17th, 2017. And with that start of that period, once we provide the fair market value appraisal, which we've done, the board has until June 17th, the EDC has until June 17th, 2018 to repurchase the property. So we're in that last 6-month window here. And so there is, that kind of lays it out. And there will be some arguments that are made that we should have known that default was going to occur before the 27th month. Maybe so, maybe not, but the contract says 27 months, you haven't complied, we move on and we just start working with the calendar as it lays out. So in visiting with Sam between board meetings, we've really looked at 4 options that the EDC has. And there may be more, but these are the 4 that came out between now and December. Is the board can elect not to repurchase the site. And it has a 0 cash impact on us, and we've already recognized the $89,100 profit and nothing else occurs. We can repurchase the site at $163,000. We estimate the buyback expense at about $8,150. We're refunding the original $97,000, which is cash on hand now, and the adjusted book value when we buy it back is $82,050. What has been discussed at the previous meeting is what we refer to as option 2S, which is a repurchase of the GSB site and to subdivide it back into its original 2 parts, because it was 2 lots and they've been combined into this 3.745 acre. When we allocate the book value on these, you end up with a $38,000 and a $43,000 allocated book value. There is some estimated expense to replatting. The fair market value appraisal of both of those sites that we obtained at the same time, we got the parent track appraisal. I typically, when I'm buying a site, I estimate 5% on the cost of it, on the cost of the real estate, whatever the contract price is, so it's 105% of you need to have to go to close. On the selling side, I normally estimate 10%. Could it be less than 10%? Yes. But if you get into paying real estate commissions on the sell side of it, that 10% will cover you all the way through all of that. I'm typically very conservative on both the cost to sell and the cost to buy on property by using those 5 and 10% numbers. So individually, we would, the profit on these would be $34,040. Individually, the cash impact is $54,000 and $49,000 negative. The cash impact combined versus option 1 is $14,000 negative, currently estimated. All of that could change really based on what our sales expense are or our replat expense, but I think both of those are very conservative and very good numbers to base this analysis off of. What we also went ahead and did is we went and looked at this site. It has 353 feet of linear curb. Based on the pricing model that we have for the MLK Technology Drive expansion to tie those technology into MLK, based on the linear feet of curb up there and dividing it by 2, because you're really only allocating half the cost of a street here, the cost of the street to develop this site is about $225,000 to $250,000 using the OPC, the opinion of probable cost estimate that we have on MLK technology. To give you a reference, fair market value at $163, to develop the site, you're going to spend $200,000 plus. What I will say on this is real estate in Bastrop, Texas, in our business park, our industrial park, it's light industrial zoning, IP zoning. In comparison to our peers in the metro region, our real estate is still a bargain, and that's a benefit, but it's also a curse as well. And so it works for us and against us both ways. And so I think that if we were south on I-35, up 95 to some of our competitors, up 130 to some of our competitors, this number would be greater than this number if we were getting the real estate appraisals that we were in some of our other competitor markets in the region. One of the things that we do, and we didn't run a full economic impact analysis on this, but we did want to look at the performance period of Good Soul Brewing and how it's going to perform out over a 10-year property tax scenario. And looking at that, in local taxes to the city of Bastrop, you're looking at about $7,800 collected. To all taxing entities, you're looking at about $36,000. Should the EDC go out and do a project in 2018 that delivers in 2019 to go on the tax rolls, deducting out the $7,800 we'd collect anyway on the 1.74 acre lot would be about $21,000 in local taxes and $97,000 to all taxing entities. Go out and do the same thing in 2019 and deliver in 2020 onto the appraisal rolls. You add $22,000 and $104. And so, actually that does not take into account, sorry, I misspoke there. That's individually. So combined it's $7,836. With one project, it's $16,000 and $30,000, and with two projects, it's $39,000 and $75,000 to the tax rolls, adjusting for taking out the $7,900 and the $36,000 off the GSP. Other factors that go into the economic impact analysis typically are jobs and wages, sales taxes collected and paid, and then also utilities, water, wastewater, and electric. This site is in Bastrop Power and Light service territory. If you go back to the map, B4 and B5 are both in Bluebonnet's territory. Option 3 that there was some discussion on was negotiate a price less than fair market value. I would not recommend that or support that as staff. We have an expectation of our client when we enter into a contractual agreement that they're going to live up to their contract. The same can be said for us, is that we're going to uphold our part of the contract. And if the contract says we'll pay fair market value, we're either going to do that or we're not. If they offered something else, this conversation up, that's an option. But ethically, I can't go ask them to sell it to us for something less than fair market value because we expect our clients to uphold their side of the contract while we do the same. There is the option out there to have GSB negotiate directly with any potential buyers. And this is a valid option that is out there. We have not talked to GSB about this, but we are more than prepared to go and do this and work with them in any way. What I do want to make everybody aware of is in 2012, the site appraised for $97,000 on a fair market value. It's $163,000 today. I can't tell you what BCAD's going to do in 2018, but I bet they watch the news just as well as anybody else. That this is their appraisal values on it. My best guess, when I put this in a model, we're looking, that's a 5% annualized increase in value. It only gets it from $1 a square foot to $1.34 by 2023. And it's almost a 9% annualized return after you pay the property taxes for the 10 years of hold period. That's a pretty good investment for a real estate investor. And that is the end of my slideshow, and I will gladly answer any questions from the board or go back.
I have a question. If we do the option of split, redividing it, how, looking at you going out and finding a business, would it make it easier to sell if you had two smaller lots, or easier to sell for you guys to sell as one large lot?
I think in that part of the park, having the two smaller lots are a greater benefit to the EDC. Having a 2-acre lot and a 1.7 5-acre lot for all intents and purposes. It allows somebody to go in there with 5,000 to 12,000 square feet on the smaller lot and probably up to 20,000 square feet on the larger lot, and maybe even larger depending upon how they lay that out down there. And I think it opens up more options of companies that would be utilizing that part of the park. Not to say that there's not a 3.74 acre lot user out there. It just kind of is in a funny spot of you're looking for somebody that's going to be using 35, 30,000, 40,000 square feet. We see most folks on the smaller end of the range are pushing 40,000, 50,000, and most of the time 60,000 and up on the utilization. And 60,000 square feet, just it won't lay out in a building design. The lot's not wide enough. It's not deep enough to really lay out 60,000 square feet and make it work.
So now the other part of that, but if we just buy it back as a whole, we can wait and divide it when we find a buyer.
That is
We don't have to do it
correct.
right
We
now.
do not have to do it right away. At some point, we have to come down to the planning department. We visited with them, and I know what the rules are on it, but we have not gone back through the records to find out how it actually got replatted from 2 lots to 1. There are 2 options there. You can go through the formal replat process, or you can go through an administrative replat process, or you can vacate the existing plat through the same method that was used to replat it originally. And if it went to P&Z and had a public hearing and went to council, that's probably not the preferred way to replat that. It's vacating the plat.
So we could, yeah.
We would do something else. But if it was done administratively, they could vacate the plat administratively. It's a matter of getting them to do the research on whether or not which methodology was used.
Okay. Another question, what, is there some, making them sell it, you know, negotiate a buyer, is there some pros and cons of doing that? I mean, are we risking them selling it to somebody that shouldn't be there, or we wouldn't want them, you know what I'm saying?
Obviously, the clients that come into our office that are a fit for that site, we would make that match. We don't get between buyers and sellers in negotiating price.
But they could sell it to anybody that wanted to build
They
there, as
could
long as
sell
they-
it to anybody that walked in their door that we may or may not know, and as long as they meet the requirements of the CCRs, the property restrictions in the park that we've laid out, and they meet the ordinance requirements of the City of Bastrop Development Ordinance, they could go build whatever they want.
And I have one more question. So now that we see how the contracts are written, are we going to change something writing in the future that if they haven't improved the land, we're just buying it back for what we sold it for? Are we going to make a step to improve this situation?
So my preference is, and Habib can speak up on what he sees at other EDCs, is to close into construction. Either they provided the fiscal surety that they're going to go and build the facility. In an Elliott Electric Supply, their banker sent us a letter that said they have the cash and they're going to go build this facility. They don't need a bank loan. And we could go out and look across the state of Texas at other projects that Elliott had done, and that's exactly what they did. So we could prove it up. In AEI's case, they'd gone and gotten their bank approval, and we had to subdivide that lot and went through the platting process on it. And we closed into their construction loan, and so they started construction as soon as they purchased the property. My preference is always to close into the construction loan if at all possible, close into the interim. There are instances in a project like a bigger project where they may need to have it in their name to collateralize it. Yes, we would need to protect that with legal language on the buyback and making sure that when we sell it that we're getting a good title policy on it. There's always the option to go do, I believe it's a special warranty deed to where we don't have to go back through the title process. They could sign it back to us. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we can even put reversion language in there to where it reverts back to us in the original deed. Oh.
If you put reversion language in a deed, the creditors don't like that. It makes them very nervous.
So there's options out there, and we're well aware that what we don't want to do is yes, it's just not good business on the EDC's part. It's not good business.
But I don't think the issue really was the contract. It was our interpretation of the contract at the last meeting. I mean, the contract gave Good Soul 18 months to find a buyer, and it gives us 6 months if we want to buy it back.
That is correct.
and then after 6 months, it then reverts back to good soul, and they can go find another buyer.
They can go do whatever they want. That is correct. The board has, the EDC, through the board, has the right to rebuy the property. And with the fair market value appraisal being obtained, there is a 6-month window here in which to do that. And the board can elect to continue on to repurchase the property. The board can elect to not repurchase the property until some later date within that 6-month period. But once we get to the end of that 6-month period in June, we have no legal, other than going and negotiating directly with them, we have no legal ability to go, hey, you need to sell this to us. They're selling it of a free, they're willing and able buyer, willing and able seller, negotiating a fair market transaction.
Also, the part of the problem was that they had the 24 months to build something, and that allowed so much, or 27 months. Which if maybe, you know, having earlier breaks, knowing you're not going to build anything, we could have stopped it earlier.
Yeah, they could have come forward
And
made an announcement that they were
They could have
ceasing.
defaulted earlier, maybe.
Yeah, they could have defaulted.
And I will say this on GSB, on Good Soul Brewing, they have been good to work with. We've had good open lines of communication with them since I got here. I think their full intent was to build the brewery. I think after they purchased the site that the market conditions within the Austin metro region changed. And then there were some unexpected costs as they went through to start developing it that changed the parameters of what they were going to be doing. And some of that may rectify itself in the next 24, 36 months and actually bring back the costs that it would require to develop a brewery on that site. The amount of pre-treatment that was going to be needed to the municipal water supply of Bastrop is not favorable to that business. It needs to be treated so much just because of the type of water that we have in it, its chemical makeup. Was unexpected for them after they purchased the property. They were prepared for the post-treatment, which anytime you build a brewery, there's post-treatment before you can go into wastewater. The pre-treatment side of it, I think, caught them a little bit off guard and delayed the project in the initial phases after they bought the lot.
I think the first agreement that you showed said that it was no more than fair market value, and the other two said fair market value. So
Correct.
the recommendation would be to go back to the first one, no more than fair market value.
Well,
Because one of the concerns I have is the expenses that we would have that we've kind of signed up to incur for the selling expenses, the replatting expenses, the buying expenses.
I agree. I think that as we move forward with new legal counsel, that we need to make sure in these agreements like this that we need to cover the fact that a building is built and they go out of business, because there is history here in Bastrop. The Vargas building, when Vargas went bankrupt, went into the bankruptcy sale, and the EDC was not able to acquire that building except at the auction at the courthouse square. And then it sat for, I don't know, a decade? Half a decade, 6 years, 7 years vacant, and we had no ability to gain control of that building. And so we had an 18,000 square foot building that was priced at a premium, that leased at a premium, that if the EDC would have had this option and could have bought it back when it went into bankruptcy at fair market value and could have exercised its right after it ceased operations, I think that is kind of what triggered this section of the contract to be written the way that it is. I would say that we need two pieces of the contract. If you don't develop it, if we do transfer it before construction, and then also what happens should you cease operations during your performance period.
I mean, look at the good thing is that they didn't build. If they built and they built a brewery and then ceased, we would have had we would have the option to buy a brewery.
Yeah.
At fair market value, and maybe there isn't a market for a brewery, then we'd have to spend $1 million to renovate it to an office space or something.
Yeah, and we don't have to buy the equipment, and I agree with that language in there, is that it's really just the building and the real estate. We're not buying any of the inventory of the equipment on the language. But you're right, we're kind of maybe
All the sewage.
maybe a little bit blessed that we're not buying a brewery
We
building.
wouldn't have had to buy the tanks, but there would have been a lot of infrastructure in there that we probably wouldn't need, or the next person wouldn't need.
Yeah, the amount of floor drains that go into those is, Kevin can probably speak to it when Cam can more than I can.
Yeah, any other comments? Any other questions? Nope. We're going to skip over to 4.1, executive session. Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will meet in a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to discuss the following. Section 551.072, deliberation about the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, Good Soul Brewing Company property. The Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will reconvene into open session to discuss, consider, and/or take any action necessary related to the executive sessions noted herein. At this point, I'll turn it over to EDC Director Sean for some comments.
Thank you, Cam, EDC Board, public. As we've gone through this tonight, I owe this board, I owe the community and the public an apology. The agenda item being reconsidered tonight was not properly prepared. You were not provided the proper documentation that was needed, and I did not speak as accurately and as truthfully as needed to be held at the December meeting. And I want to apologize to y'all in not performing my job to the highest level that you expect, and that the community expects. And to those that I have hurt and those that I have offended, I offer my sincerest apologies. It is not within my character to not achieve at the highest level, and I failed the EDC and I failed Bastrop in this item and the preparation for it in December. And I should have spoken to this at the beginning of the evening, and I apologize to that. And it hurts me that I did not do my job to the best of my ability, and I am sorry. And I appreciate the board and all the support y'all have given me through all the years of me being here. And I hope to be able to serve you at the level that you expect in the future, and appreciate your support. And anything that I can do, please feel free to ask, and I'm here to serve the board and the community at the best of my ability.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'd just like to reiterate what Sean said on behalf of your legal counsel, and apologize for not bringing this to your attention in a more timely manner.
Sean, Habib, thank you. A couple of notes to say that this chair and this board is disappointed. That's to say at the very least. At our last board meeting, we voted on a resolution and passed a resolution with not all the information. And that being said, yes, we're disappointed in Sean. We've spoken to this. We've spoken to Habib, some disappointment there as well. But we also own that decision. We own that vote. We own the decision. But I can let the public know and staff and this board that we will take some measures to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And you will see some of those measures and or tasks for those measures at the next board meeting. They'll be placed on the agenda item. But again, I want to say that to the public, we want to be completely transparent. We own the vote. We own the decision. We recognize that there has been some inaccuracies that were given to the board, and then we are now prepared to act and move forward on those resolutions.
Since I made the motion on December 18th, I've asked the board to allow me to make the motion tonight. Before I make my motion, I need to share some information. I personally apologize to the citizens of Bastrop for not spending more time deliberating the details and asking more questions back on December 18th. I made my motion based on statements of our executive director and hearing no contradiction from our legal counsel. On December 19th, the board received an email from Mr. Kirkpatrick stating that he had misspoken and that the performance agreement from 2014 did not obligate the BEDC board to reacquire the property. He did state in his email that although it was not an obligation, it was still his recommendation to purchase the property as, in his opinion, he thought it made the most fiscal sense. Over the following days, I spoke with Mr. Kirkpatrick, Mr. Chavez, Mr. Zek regarding my concerns that the framework for the decision of the board was inaccurate. It was agreed on December 28th that another board meeting as soon as possible would be called, and that's why we're here tonight. On January 2nd, Mr. Kirkpatrick provided an agenda for tonight and a copy of the Good Soul Brewery Performance Agreement. I read it in detail yesterday. I read it in detail that night of January 2nd. The following day, on January 3rd, I spoke with Habib and asked if Section 12.6 on page 10 of the contract terminated the performance agreement and required that there would be no further obligations. Habib concurred that this was a reasonable interpretation, and we have discussed this in executive session. There will be information coming out with that in the future. I want to apologize for my statement implying that prior board, legal counsel, and executive director had made a dog deal and not considered the citizens of Bastrop in their decision. I've spent the last 7 months working to provide transparency and accountability in all the actions of city government. It is extremely important to me that the citizens know I'm sorry for my part in this, and I will work diligently to take actions to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. With that, I move that Resolution R 2017-26 be revoked and that Resolution R 201727 be pulled from consideration by City Council.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution passes. We are adjourned.